All right, so here's our next video, which is going to be introducing a new palette. It's one that's kind of overlooked, but it's actually super useful. So go to your Windows menu, the window menu. You're going to go way down here to Pathfinder. It's going to bring up a palette that looks like this. So the Pathfinder allows you to intersect shapes to make new shapes. So it's kind of like almost like an advanced cookie cutter. And you can kind of think of Adobe Illustrator as almost like working with a bunch of customizable little pieces of paper that overlap and interact together. And we'll see how color can be brought into the play for that. But the Pathfinder really allows us to create custom shapes from all kinds of things, and it is really, really useful. So I'm going to just do a real basic thing here. I'm going to make a combination of a little shape that I've drawn with my pen tool. And then let's say I've got a ellipse on here, and a polygon, and a star. And I've decided that those three shapes, I'd like them to all work as one, rather than a bunch of independent kind of shapes. Also, this is where it's time to start really paying attention to your layers palette. Okay, so you can see as I created those things, it's creating these different shapes. Okay. So there's a few different things that we can do. I'm going to make a duplicate. So when I'm using the selection tool, I clicked and dragged to select all these together. Now I'm going to hold down the Alt key. I'm going to click and drag, and it's going to duplicate that file, that set of shapes. And you can see how it duplicated them all here. So I'm just going to do a few different things using the Pathfinder tool so that you can see how these different things work together to create custom shapes. So in my first kind of little selection of shapes here, I would like these just to all become one shape. So that's what the shape mode here is, which is called Unite. So you can see what that did there. That just created one continuous path. So it got rid of everything that was inside and just united it into one shape. Or there's another thing I can do, which maybe I want all these little intersecting shapes to be their own thing. So that's what the divide tool is all about. So you can see in the divide tool what it did is it made a group. And a group is kind of like a layer. You can expand a group just like you can a layer. And you can have groups within groups within groups. You can have layers within layers within layers. It's kind of a Matryoshka doll. You can go as deep as you want, but what you really kind of want to avoid is getting way too complicated with your grouping and pathing. We kind of want to keep things simple so that we can get to our shapes. But you can see how the Pathfinder divide tool created all these shapes within inside that group. I can now right click this and then go ungroup, which then just broke those out of the group up to into my layer. And now each of those individual pieces is available as a shape. Kind of like puzzle pieces. Probably not immediately obvious why that's useful, but there's all kinds of times when we're making graphics where being able to just divide out shapes like that is super useful. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get rid of these because they're just kind of for demo. Let's say I wanted to say, well, I want to add this star shape to my continuous shape. I kind of want to put that there. So this is where we can use the minus front tool. So minus front is referring to the stack. So in front means on top in terms of the layer structure. So front means whatever's on top of what's behind it. So in this particular case, this path here, okay, is underneath or behind this path here. So when I select both of these at the same time, and I hit minus front, that's going to cut that like a cookie cutter out of the shape of whatever is intersecting over top. If I do Control Z to undo that, same thing, right next to it there's intersect. Okay, so what that's going to do is wherever these are touching, just give me that shape. So that's another use for that. And then finally the exclude, which will just separate out what's in there. It's essentially doing the same thing that the Pathfinder does, but just saving you an extra step. Okay, so you can kind of go through and see merging, trimming, cropping, outline, minus back. These have their place, but you can pretty much get everything done with these first three. As you practice with them, intersecting how they work, you'll start to realize why these ones are located here, because you do really just end up using those as your primary go-tos. And divide can typically get a lot of stuff done, because say I just want to exclude that, that's one thing, I just delete that shape, or I just delete that shape, or vice versa. But it kind of gives me the same thing that all of these options can give me. So we end up using divide pretty much all the time. So that's where you get really comfortable just right-clicking, ungrouping. Okay, so draw yourself a few shapes, link them all together, get comfortable with this idea of navigating through your shapes, through your layer menu. It's no different than using the selection tool to select graphics on your artboard, and then using the Pathfinder Unite and Divide to create your own kind of custom shapes. And we'll kind of get into more practical applications of that in other videos, but this is just working with the real basics.